In today's video, I'm talking about 5 things smart photographers do to improve their photos. Welcome back, it's so good to see you all again. So today, we're out in the woodlands, hopefully capture a few woodland photos, and I've got Luna with me as well, so it should be a cracking day out. So let's get on to the first point. So smart thing number 1 to avoid is light that's pointing straight at your subject. So typically when shooting a portrait, many photographers like to have the light source just off to one side because it offers that good balance between light and shadow. And I think the same principle can be used for all genres of photography, to be honest, especially landscape photography. So when the light is directly, say, behind me and pointing straight at the subject, it can look really flat because there isn't really any shadow detail, and we often need that shadow detail to convey a 3-dimensional look. So light on a tree trunk is a great way to show this. When the light is from the side, the trunk will have that curved appearance, whereas when the light is from the front, it can look quite flat. So out of all of the different types of light that we've got available, I think front lighting is the one that I actually favour the least. It's always worth looking at which way the light's coming from. Now in the woodland, for example, it's not always necessarily where the sun is. So like here we've got a big break in the canopy behind me and the light's coming from this way, but the sun is actually up there somewhere. So yeah, just depends on where the breaks are in the canopy. Or similar, if you're making a portrait, for example, and you're using window light, you know, obviously the light's coming through the window, isn't it? So yeah, the light source doesn't necessarily have to be where the sun is. So it's absolutely stunning here, so vibrant, it really is. You know, we're at that time of year now where everything is coming into leaf, the bluebells are out, the ferns are just unfurling as well, which is absolutely amazing. And there's some beautiful colours here. You know, when everything's wet with rain, you really do get that vibrancy you don't get at any other time. So I love getting out into the woodland when it's raining. Luna, come on, good girl. Yeah, so I hope we can make a couple of images. Absolutely stunning, this area. So point number 2 that smart photographers do to improve their photos is to search for simplicity. Now, I think simplicity comes in many shapes and forms. So let's go back to the portrait photographer for a second. So quite often with portraits, they're shot with a very shallow depth of field, aren't they? And this helps the subject to stand out from the background. Now we can still do that with a landscape photo, but quite often we like to show more of the environment than just the subject itself. So here's a couple of approaches that I use to simplify a scene. The first one is colour. So if you've only got 2 colours in your shot, then straight away the most of the scene feels less cluttered, if you like. It feels a lot calmer. Better still, if you can find colours that complement each other, then your photo will fit together even better. And the colour wheel will show you how complementary colours work, so that's worth a look. Another great way of looking for simplicity is to find areas with uniform details. So for example, you might have a lone tree against a lake or a tree nestled in a bed of wildflowers. Areas that offer this uniformity can be used as negative space, allowing your subjects to pop from their surroundings. And what's not to like about wildflowers? Ah, it's raining again. Good girl, good girl. So a few people have asked me why I haven't been out recently with Luna, because she was in quite a few videos at the start of the year. Well, the truth of the matter is I just haven't been to locations where it's been right for her. So she's got quite a lot of energy and she needs to run. So generally when I'm on the open beaches, that's great, you know, or in the woodland when we're away from people, that's ideal. But I just haven't really been at locations where I've been able to let her run freely. So she hasn't been in the videos. But I do post quite a lot of Instagram stories of her when we're out and about on walks or doing other things. So if you're not following me on Instagram, why not check that out to keep up to date with everything that goes on behind the scenes as well. It'd be awesome to connect on there. But yeah, she's good girl. Come on then, let's get on. So point number 3 is to look for contrast, not light. So as photographers, we're always barking on about light, aren't we? But great light doesn't necessarily make a great photo. Ultimately, it's how we position that light within the frame that will give us the best opportunity for success. So if we think of contrast instead of light, we're now looking at both the light and the shadow and how they work together to form the composition. After all, light without shadow will often make for a boring image. So for me personally, I'm always looking for how shadow interacts with my subjects. In the woodland, for example, like we are today, I try to avoid making a shot when the transition between the light and the shadow is very, very harsh. Ideally, I want that transition to be quite soft, so it gives a feeling of calmness. And I found the best light for shooting many landscape scenes is when the light is slightly diffused by clouds. So say in a day when there's the odd cloud about, just as that cloud starts to pass in front of the sun, can be the perfect moment to take the shot, because it gives us that nice amount of light with just enough diffusion to soften the edges of the shadow. I think portrait photographers often use this similar approach by using tools like softboxes or diffusion panels to help control the edge of the shadows. And they also use it to shape the light. So yeah, again, I think it's something that's relevant for many genres of photography. So point number 4 is editing locally as opposed to globally. So I used to edit my photos in Lightroom, mainly in the basics panel. You know, I would adjust the sliders to add contrast, saturation, maybe add a vignette to draw the eye in. But these days, I do 90% of my edits locally with brushes. And I found it to be such a game changer to how my photos look. So if you're not familiar with the terms global and local, globally means when you change the contrast, you are changing the contrast to the whole of the image, whereas locally, as the term suggests, you're just changing a very localized part of the image. Now, the reason why this is so much better is that more than likely, different parts of the image will need to be treated differently. For example, we might want to add, say, saturation to the sky, but not our foreground, or we may want to add contrast to the foreground and not the background. So using brushes to paint the adjustments exactly where we want them to be can really take our images to the next level. So yeah, I highly recommend local adjustments. Please allow me to mention my landscape photography ebook, all about how I compose my photos. The PDF book has over 120 pages and 200 photos that show my thought process from finding a composition to finally pressing the shutter button. I'm sure you'll find it a great read, and it is the best way to help support my channel. If you do fancy checking it out, there is a link down there in the video description. So point number 5 that smart photographers do is again to do with editing actually, and it's to let your edits rest. Now for me, sometimes I don't have time to let my edits rest because I'm creating these weekly videos and I need to get the video out, but almost always I carry on making tweaks to those photos. Sometimes I end up somewhere completely different to my original edits. So if you have the time, I would suggest getting, say, 80% of where you think your edit should be, and then come back a day later, and I guarantee a fresh set of eyes can completely change your approach to the edit. This is especially true when it comes to colour, because our eyes tend to adjust to what we're seeing. So yeah, if you can, let your edits rest, come back to them with a fresh set of eyes. So I've been searching this area for quite some time now, and I've found it quite challenging, and the main reason for that is the light. The light's been quite flat, but what we do have here is a field on each side of the woodland basically. But what that means is quite often you get light coming in from both sides, so it's quite difficult to find that three-dimensionality that we spoke about earlier. However, sometimes when it's not going your way, you have to think outside of the box a little bit, don't you, and try and get creative, and that's what I'm trying to do here. I've got the tripod really low down, shooting really wide, right up at this beech tree here, so I'm getting all of the sky and all of these wonderful droopy branches hanging down, and some bluebells in the foreground. That's why I want to get as low as possible to try and skim through those. So I'm going to go ahead and take this shot now, and hopefully it's half decent in really challenging conditions. big thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, you might like the one that is up here. And if you could give the video a like, that would be absolutely awesome. That really does help out. The other link up here will take you to my landscape photography ebook, all about how I compose my photos, which is definitely worth a look. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you all again next week.